What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. I got a video I want to show you. It's of Jesse Waters last night, and he's talking about a report that just came out. Absolutely devastating, but it does prove that everything we've been saying and Donald Trump has been saying is right once again. Here, check this out.
Coming out and basically saying I'm a big border hawk. She had her nice jacket on. This is her big border security speech she's about to give. She just let in 10 million illegals. Half of them were convicted criminals. That means about 5% of the Biden-Harris migrants are ex-cons. And Biden-Harris have no idea where they are. Nope. They let in 13,000 convicted murderers and lost track of them. They let in 15,000 convicted rapists, and now they're gone. I always assumed when an illegal was caught by Border Patrol and they did a background check and they found out the guy was a convicted murderer, they'd immediately detain them and deport them. But no, I had no idea Biden and Harris were catching convicted killers and letting them loose into the country. Oh, you murdered your brother? Here's a court date in 5 years and for your asylum hearing. Take this free phone, get on that plane. I hope you like New York. Oh, you raped a kid? Here's a free sandwich, a free sex change, and a bus ticket to Houston. These people aren't seeking asylum. We should be seeking asylum from them. Trump says, I told you so.
Some egghead maybe said, oh, it's wonderful to release people, and it sounds so nice. We're releasing migrants into our country. But these are killers. These are people at the highest level of killing that cut your throat, and they won't even think about it the next morning. These are convicted people for life, are now in our country, and I can finally look at them and see, I say, I told you so to the fake news. What Kamala Harris has done is unforgivable. It's a crime, what she did. It's got to be criminal.
Yep.
There's no greater act of disloyalty than to extinguish the sovereignty of your own nation, and that's what she's done. She's ruined our nation. She's ruined our nation.
And the media called Trump a liar for saying countries were emptying their prisons. Well, where do you think 500,000 ex-cons came from?
Yep. He was right. Once again, we all were right, folks. We knew that this was going to happen. It was just going to take time. You can't flood a country, a sovereign nation, with 10, 15, 20, 30 million illegal immigrants and expect them all to be perfect, outstanding members of society. Even a small percentage would mean you're letting in hundreds of thousands of convicted murderers, rapists, sex traffickers. And what he's talking about is this report that just dropped yesterday. This is shocking, ladies and gentlemen. This report right here is shocking. We've already made a video about this, but I'm going to have to do it again because apparently people on the left, Democrats, don't understand why the border bill was so bad. And if you really want to accuse somebody of playing politics with their southern border, then explain to me why Joe Biden and Kamala Harris dismantled all of the Trump-era policies and unsecured the most secure border in U.S. history. And they did it for what? Political reasons. So who's playing politics with our southern border? Now, I'm going to get into the southern border bill, this so-called bipartisan border bill here in a little bit. But I want to get into this report. So you're going to be hearing about this all week because now we finally have the inevitable outcome of what happens when you open the southern borders and allow tens of millions of illegal immigrants into our country. So there was a report that came out from Chairman Green, new shocking numbers of criminal illegal aliens roaming free in the U.S. Now, this is from House.gov, so this is from Homeland Security. So this was released on the 27th. So today, House Committee on Homeland Security Chairman Mark E. Green from Tennessee issued a statement from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement showing that as of July 21, 2024, nearly 650,000 criminal illegal aliens were currently on ICE's non-detained docket and roaming free in the communities throughout the United States. This figure includes roughly 15,000 individuals convicted or charged with murder, more than 20,000 of sexual assault, and more than 105,000 of assault. This, ladies and gentlemen, should infuriate everybody. So here's the background of this. So last week, ICE Deputy Director Patrick Leckletter, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I don't even know. I'm going to skip over his name. So ICE Deputy Director Patrick sent a letter to lawmakers detailing the numbers of criminal aliens on ICE's national docket. Nearly 650,000 criminal aliens were on the NDD, meaning they had previously been encountered by CBP, turned over to ICE, and had their criminal history documented, and then were released into the United States. And here's the specific breakdown. You ready for this? This, ladies and gentlemen, is shocking. It truly is shocking. So among these 650,000 documented criminals released into the United States, 14,944 of them were convicted of homicide. 20,061 of them were convicted of sexual assault. 105,000 were convicted of just assault. If you could, whatever that means, I don't know. 60,000 were convicted of burglary, larceny, or robbery. 126,000 were convicted of traffic offenses. 16,000 of them were convicted of weapon offenses. 3,372 were convicted of kidnapping, and 3,900 were convicted of commercialized sexual offenses. This is what the Biden-Harris released into our country, and they're roaming free today. And the cause of it, you want to know what the cause is? Democrat policies and their sanctuary cities. That's exactly what's caused this disaster, was the sanctuary cities. Because ICE would release these people in the sanctuary cities, and because sanctuary cities do not detain illegal immigrants, they release them into the state, and then they go wherever they want. So in its recent report, the, quote, crisis by design, the House Committee on Homeland Security documented on how DHS law enforcement often have very little information to use in vetting illegal aliens crossing the border. And the massive flood of illegal border crossers under the Biden-Harris administration has made this task even more difficult. According to the former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, vetting has become a, quote, check-the-box exercise. The fact that in hundreds of thousands of cases, criminal illegal aliens are being released even after derogatory information about them has been discovered is simply inexcusable. And it could be traced back to the Biden-Harris administration's policy of mass, quote, catch and release. The exact policy that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris abolished their first week in office. I played the video 1,000 times of ABC, MSNBC, CNN, NBC bragging about how Joe Biden's first list of accomplishments is dismantling all of the Trump-era border policies and immigration policies. And we're going to get into this so-called bipartisan border bill here in a minute, because there is so much misinformation about this, and this is how Democrats get out of this debacle that they've created, is, of course, by blaming Republicans. And because of the bill's 370 pages long, the leftist Democrats and their intellectual laziness will not read the bill. And so what do? They just constantly repeat the talking points they've been told by their mainstream media. So the number of criminal aliens crossing illegally under the Biden-Harris leadership is astounding. From FY21 through FY24, year to date, the Border Patrol recorded more than 53,000 arrests of illegal aliens with criminal backgrounds, approximately 30,000 more such arrests than FY17 to FY20. So think about that. 30,000 more arrests than during the Trump administration. By October 2023, the Border Patrol was apprehending more than 47 illegal aliens per day with, quote, serious criminal histories, according to one veteran agent. Quote, there's really nothing stopping them from coming here at this point. Deputy Chief Patrol Agent Dustin Caudill of the Border Patrol's Yuma sector told the committee last year that, quote, any crime that can be committed, we do encounter people who have committed them. This is, ladies and gentlemen, just like Donald Trump said, and I've been saying on this microphone for months, what these people have done to our southern border and our immigration process is criminal. These people should be charged and indicted for what they have done to our country. They have destroyed our sovereign nation by opening and destroying our southern borders. I mean, this should be, if no reason at all, what these people have done to our southern border should cost them this election, period. It would be a message to these Democrats that what they did to our southern border and our immigration policy and our immigration process is not okay. Voting for it again just gives them the mandate and pretty much tells them, okay, we're cool with it. You just keep doing what you're doing. And I guarantee you, if Kamala Harris is elected, you will see 40 to 50 million more illegal aliens into this country. This will look like a walk in the park compared to what's going to happen if Kamala Harris is elected. And I know she's claimed that I'm going to secure the border, I'm going to secure our immigration system, all this crap 38 days before the election, which I find just rich with irony, folks. Where you have a candidate, you have a senator, you have a vice president, a woman who has been in control of the southern border since the administration started, and 38 days before the election, now you want to go to the southern border and tell people how much you care and want to fix it? This is unacceptable, folks. So that's that report. Let's get into this border bill, because I know the leftists that are watching this are probably saying, yeah, but, this is all Republicans' fault, even though it was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who dismantled and purposely unsecured a perfectly secure border their first day in office. But somehow this is Republicans' fault because they didn't sign a bill that was unnecessary because Donald Trump secured the border without a bill. There was never a need for a bill. Again, it was the Democrats that politicized this. It was all for a messaging. It was all for Democrats to say exactly what they're saying now. Oh, well, Republicans, this is their fault because they stopped a border bill that would have secured the border. What do they say? The most bipartisan, the strongest border bill in history? It is a load of crap, folks. It's all a lie. It is a talking point for Democrats to evade the responsibility and the consequences of what they've done to our southern border. So let's get into this so-called border bill. This is from The Hill. And The Hill, by the way, is in no way a right-leaning outlet at all. In fact, I think they've officially went to the dark side. They certainly hate Donald Trump. But the title of the article is The Big Lie About the So-Called Bipartisan Border Security Bill. Okay, notice how they put Bipartisan Border Security Bill in quotations because it's fake. It doesn't exist. It's just a name. This is what these people are best at. They're best at owning the language. They are very good at it. And you could see the effects from it. So President Biden claims that the Senate Border Act of 2024 was the, quote, toughest and fairest set of reforms to secure the border we've had in our country. That's actually not true because H.R. 2 is actually the toughest and fairest set of reforms to secure the border, and it's been sitting in the Senate since the beginning of this administration. H.R. 2, if Democrats really cared about securing the border, would have passed it 2 years ago when it was sent over to the Senate. But again, we're not dealing with people living in reality here. We're dealing with people that make politics out of everything. And just how they use abortion as an election issue, this is how they make the southern border an election issue. This is how they evade responsibility because they purposely unsecured a secure border, flooding this country, causing generational damage to this country. It's going to take 100 years to fix what they've done to this country. So Republicans claim that the Border Act would make the border crisis worse by encouraging even more migrants to make illegal border crossings. Trump says, quote, only a fool or radical left Democrat would vote for this horrendous legislation. And that is the only thing Donald Trump said about this bill. So this whole notion that Donald Trump killed the border bill, he never even spoke to Senate leaders or House congressmen. In no way can you find any quote where Donald Trump posted or spoke with the congressman saying kill the bill. Donald Trump is not president. He can't do anything. And you can't find anywhere where he's told a congressman or senator to kill the bill. So it's just, again, it's another talking point. But let's get back into this. I don't want to get too off track here. So Biden's response is that the Republicans have to decide. Do they want to solve the problem or do they want to keep playing politics with the border? Again, it was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who dismantled the border to begin with. So none of this stuff would even be necessary if these people didn't purposely unsecure our border. Now, was it perfect? No. But was it secure? Yes. It was more secure than it is now. And it was the most secure border in U.S. history. And Donald Trump did it all without a bill. So again, it's all bullshit. So the Border Act was part of a $118 billion national security supplemental package. A motion to proceed with the Border Act in the package failed by a vote of 49 to 50. The package went forward without it. The Border Act isn't at all dead. Vice President Kamala Harris will certainly bring it back if she prevails in the upcoming election and is our next president. Now, does that make any sense? For the party that wants open borders to want this bill should tell you everything you need to know, because it doesn't actually secure the border. It makes it worse. And we're going to get into it in a second. Kamala Harris says, quote, it's the most significant border bill in decades. Again, another talking point that you always hear people on the left constantly repeating. She claims that the Border Act was, quote, was all set to pass, but at the last minute, Trump directed his allies in the Senate to vote it down. Again, you can't find any communications between Donald Trump and congressmen or women or Senate majority or anybody in Congress. They just want to blame Donald Trump for this. That's what the key is. That was the whole purpose of this. But the conservatives are right about the bill. The Border Act would not stop the administration from continuing to create questionable parole programs to admit migrants who don't have visas or other valid entry documents. It would not end catch and release. It would not stop migrants from using meritless asylum claims to enter and remain in the United States indefinitely. As U.S. District Court Judge T. Kent Wetherall said in a 2023 immigration case, the Biden-Harris administration's actions have been, quote, akin to posting a flashing come in, we're open sign on the southern border. Yep. The Border Act does provide the president with authority to close the border down when illegal crossings between ports of entry reach an average of 4,000 per day for more than 7 days. However, unless the average rises above 5,000 per day for more than 7 days, which would be more than 1.8 million per year. And even that provision would sunset in 3 years. This is not a resolution of the issue. This is the key point to all of this is that this bill, this so-called bipartisan border bill, these provisions would only go into effect after 5,000 were per day for more than 7 days were let into the country, which means you're essentially allowing 1.8 million people into the country. Why? Because there was 10,000 coming in per day. And so what that does is that essentially codifies illegal immigration. You're essentially saying, oh, well, we're going to allow 5,000 illegal aliens into our country a day. What does that do? That is codifying and legalizing illegal immigration. And it would still allow 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country per year. So it doesn't stop the illegal crossings into the country at all. And the key point to all of this is that it's up to Joe Biden to uphold this provision. So what they're saying is that the same person that is responsible for dismantling the Trump-era policies and unsecuring a secure border would be the same person responsible for enacting this provision. So he can pretty much, when it comes to this provision, say they reach the 5,000 per day over a 7-day period, which they would. Joe Biden could say, no, we're not going to enact this provision right now. We're going to file an act of emergency. And then the whole thing cancels out. That was a poison pill that they entered into the bill to give, ultimately, Joe Biden the authority over this provision. This is how they do things here, folks. It's so sneaky, it's so deceptive, but people buy it, man. So here we go, back into the article. Moreover, While an order to shut the border down is in effect, Customs and Border Patrol would be required to interview a minimum of 1,400 inadmissible migrants per day at ports of entry along the southwest border. These interviews have resulted in releasing migrants without visas or other valid entry documents into the country 95.8% of the time. The Border Act also would authorize asylum officers to adjudicate asylum applications at the border in non-custodial, non-adversarial proceedings. Migrants who receive a positive decision in the initial screening process would be eligible for work authorizations and be referred to a protection merits interview for a decision on their applications. However, if they establish eligibility by clear and convincing evidence, the asylum officer could grant their asylum applications right there during the screening interview. So which means you're turning regular officers into judges. So these people wouldn't have to be entered into this ginormous 10-year backlog of asylum cases for judges to hear. They would essentially be considered for work visas right then and there. They were bypassing the entire process. Denials, on the other hand, could be appealed to a protection appellate board. So even if they're denied and the officer at the border says, hey, there's no bueno, you're not coming in, we don't believe you, your asylum case is denied, they can appeal the process. And where do they go while they're waiting appeal? That's right, into the United States. So, and the appellate process is backed up 10, 15 years. This system would be used to gain quick entry with work authorization, and it would facilitate more meritless asylum claims. Unlike asylum hearings before an immigration judge, the government would not be permitted to cross-examine the asylum seeker to probe the veracity of his claims or to ensure that the asylum officer understands the statutory provisions he has to apply. This is a lot to expect from asylum officers. Law professor Steven Tauriello Show has observed that, quote, immigration law has been called the second most complex area, second only to tax law. This is true. At best, the new asylum process would slow down the rate at which the immigration court backlogs grows. The backlog has been accelerating at a breakneck pace since the start of the Biden administration, from 1.3 million cases to 3.7 million cases now. The average wait for an initial master calendar hearing for pleadings and to schedule an individual hearing on the merits of a case is 4 years. Merits hearings are being scheduled more than 5 years in advance. The total wait for a merits hearing can be up to 10 years. Moreover, progress isn't being made on reducing the backlog. As of June, the immigration court had completed 676,616 cases in fiscal year 2024. At that rate, it would take more than 5 years to clear the backlog, even if the court did not receive any more cases. If more asylum officers are going to be hired, they should be used by Citizenship and Immigration Services to adjudicate affirmative applications instead of being sent to the border to adjudicate defensive applications. An asylum application is considered affirmative if the applicant isn't submitting it in the removal proceedings. See how complex this gets? And trust me, these NGOs working with the migrant traffickers and the coyotes, they all work together, folks. The American taxpayer is essentially funding the destruction of their own southern border. And by sending money to these NGOs to bring all these to cause this crisis. So we're paying these NGOs billions of dollars, like Catholic Charity and many, many other NGOs, billions of dollars from our taxpayers. Because why? Because the government doesn't produce anything. It doesn't create money. It takes it from us. So we're essentially funding our own demise. So in January 2018, Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that it was facing a crisis-level backlog of affirmative asylum cases. With more than 311,000 pending applications, it rose to more than 1 million applications by the end of the fiscal year 2023. A CIS ombudsman has estimated that the time required for processing that many asylum applications is likely to approach a decade. So according to Elizabeth Jacobs, these extreme backlogs are not only eroding the credibility of the immigration system, but also encouraging additional illegal immigration to the United States. This is because long backlogs ensure that even those aliens who meet the Biden administration's narrow enforcement priorities or do not have legitimate asylum claims are nevertheless provided an opportunity to live in the United States for numerous years. For a decade, at least. The immigration court backlog and the administration's enforcement guidelines combine to make the deportation of illegal crossers who reach the interior of the country extremely unlikely. And it isn't possible to stop illegal crossings when the crossers know that they will be safe from deportation once they have reached the interior of the country. Illegal border crossings have reached the highest level in the agency's 100-year history, averaging 2 million per year. ICE only removed 59,011 deportable migrants in fiscal year 2021, 72,000 in 2022, and 142,000 in 2023, which totals 273,768. So that's all that's been deported since the beginning of the Biden administration. So you have 10, 15 million coming in and 273,000 deported. Notwithstanding this dismal enforcement record, the Border Act would provide billions in funding to give agencies more money to facilitate processing and releasing even more undocumented migrants into the country. That's what it was. It wasn't a secure the border bill. It was to streamline the process bill. That's what it did. It didn't stop illegal immigration. All it did was give more money to NGOs to hire more officers, to let in more illegal immigrants, to process them faster. It doesn't say anything in the 370-page bill about stopping the illegal immigration from coming into the country. The only thing the bill mentions is about how they're going to streamline the process and make it faster. That's it. And not to mention, it gave more money to Ukraine and Israel than it did to actually secure the border. That's what this bill was for. This bill was a way for the neocons and the newly warmongering Democrats to get money to fund Ukraine. Why these people are so obsessed with Ukraine all of a sudden, I have no idea, but I'm sure we're going to find out in a few years. All these people are probably stuffing their pockets, coming out of the pool with fistfuls of cash that we're sending over to Ukraine because Ukraine's one of the most corrupt countries on the face of the planet. And when you send corrupt countries billions of dollars, you can expect a small percentage to be lost to corruption. But when you're talking a small percentage of hundreds of billions of dollars, you're talking at least $1 billion. I don't know about you, but you can split up $1 billion between a handful of people and everybody be sitting pretty nice. That's why they're obsessed with the Ukraine war, and that's why we continue to send money over there. They don't give a flying crap about Ukraine. But let's get back to this. So the takeaway in this bill would just perpetuate the, quote, let as many undocumented migrants as possible into the country, measures that caused the border crisis. So in other words, it wouldn't do anything. It would not do anything. It would just give more money for this to continue faster. That's it. No, the reason why is because the three most important policies that Donald Trump enacted during his time in office that gave us the most secure border in U.S. history was the Remain in Mexico policy. And then you had the COVID restrictions. Again, we went over this already in multiple episodes. But the Remain in Mexico was by far the most effective. And that was the very first thing that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris dismantled when they got into office. And this bill does not do anything about the catch and release system. In fact, it facilitates it more. What really happened in the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration utilized this parolee program, essentially using a program that's supposed to be used rarely for political refugees and people that are supposed to be here for court hearings or they're witnesses and murder trials. That's what the parolee program was for. Well, the Biden-Harris administration seen that loophole and turned it into their little way of pumping this country with tens of millions of illegal immigrants. Not just allowing them to cross the border, but flying them in from Mexico. And why would they fly them in? Well, because it would bring down the apprehension numbers at the border, so that Kamala Harris can go out there on the stump and say, look how good we're doing. We're bringing down the numbers of apprehensions at the border. Meanwhile, they're flying them in overhead. They're not stopping the crisis. They're not stopping the numbers from coming in. In fact, they're making it more efficient. And that's exactly what this bill would have done. So for those of you people out there accusing the Republicans for this crisis that the Biden-Harris administration created, the so-called bipartisan border bill was neither bipartisan nor was it necessary. because there was 3 people that were negotiating this bill behind closed doors in secret. You had Langford, the Republican, Sinema, the Independent, and I don't even know who the Democrat was. 3 people negotiating this bill in secret for months. They dropped this 370-page bill onto the laps of congressmen and women 24 hours before voting on it. 370 pages. And I just want to remind people that the biggest reason they wanted to pass this bill was not for the secure border, was because of the Ukraine funding. Because that's where the hundreds of billions of dollars were. Where 80 billion of that went to the Ukraine-Israel war. I mean, that's why they wanted it. They didn't actually want to secure the border. So for months, these 3 people behind closed doors were saying to themselves, how can we get more money to Ukraine and Israel? How can we get more money to these wars? While making it look like it's actually a bill for the southern border. That's what these people do. The last 4 years, and frankly, the last 4 decades, has been nothing but trying to deceive the American people with these crappy bills like the Inflation Reduction Act, which was actually the Green New Deal bill. But because the American people were concerned about inflation, they were like, I know how we can get this passed without the American people knowing, is we'll call it the Inflation Reduction Act. That's what these people do. Did it reduce inflation? No, it did the opposite. The Congressional Budget Office came out and said, if you pass this bill, this is going to increase inflation. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did it anyways. And you might say, well, Kamala Harris was VP. She didn't possibly have anything to do with the Inflation Reduction Act bill. Yes, she did, because Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote to get the bill across the finish line. So in a way, you can say the Inflation Reduction Act bill was all of Kamala Harris's fault. She was the leading cause of the Inflation Reduction Act, which increased inflation for everybody. So again, it is nothing but lies and deception from this administration and really from the entire Washington swamp, the Washington establishment. That's what the American people are sick and tired of. The American people are sick and tired of this corrupt, inefficient, bloated government, stripping them of what it means to be an American citizen, stripping the American people of the American dream, and jumping in the pool of cash and coming out with fistfuls of money. That's what the American people are sick and tired of. They're sick and tired of politicians going into government broke and coming out rich. And that's exactly where Donald Trump came in. The American people are trying to figure out a way to give the biggest middle finger they can to this feckless, corrupt government that's been leading them off a cliff the past 4 decades. And Donald Trump is that middle finger. So hopefully people understand the border bill now. And just in case for the lefties out there, if you don't, I got something else for you. So this is from the Federation for Americans Immigration Reform. So the Federation for American Immigration Reform came out with this letter that they sent to Congress. It came out February 5th, 2024. It's the Senate border deal encourages asylum fraud, leaves catch and release in place. It says on Sunday night, Senate negotiators unveiled their long-awaited border security deal for inclusion in President Biden's foreign aid package, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is poised to act on the proposal Wednesday. As advertised, the border security deal implements several changes in immigration process. The changes, however, do not fundamentally address the core problems plaguing our system. The bill does not stop asylum abuse. It does not end the Biden administration's illegal use of parole, and it does not end catch and release. In reality, the bill, number 1, leaves existing law in place under which the Biden administration has been, quote, illegally releasing illegal aliens encountered at the border. Number 2, it does nothing to stop the president's illegal use of parole. Number 3, it creates a whole new, quote, claim and release process for asylum seekers that actually encourages asylum abuse. Number 4, provides limited expulsion authority for a temporary period of time and exempts huge swaths of illegal migrants. And number 5, appropriates billions of dollars to NGOs and Homeland Security to continue the administration's open border policies. Among the many provisions in the 370-page bill, there are 2 core changes to current law. First, the bill creates a parallel processing path under Section 235B for anyone claiming asylum or other form of humanitarian protection. DHS has complete discretion to determine who is put into this path. However, aliens are not eligible to be processed under 235B unless they have been in the U.S. for more than 14 days and are encountered within 100 miles of the border. Unaccompanied alien minors may not be processed under this authority. Aliens referred to be processed under Section 235B will be immediately released and placed on alternatives to detention. They are guaranteed work authorization almost immediately. This is another organization that pretty much came out after this bill was released because, again, it was negotiated in secret and dropped 24 hours before it was supposed to be voted on, which didn't give people much time to read it. But when you do read it, you're like, this does absolutely nothing. In fact, it's going to make it worse because it's going to process the illegal immigrants faster into the United States. It's going to give them work visas. It's going to give them everything they need to settle into the country. It flies them wherever they want to go, free phone, free food, whatever they need. It did absolutely nothing to secure our border. Nothing. And the worst part about all of it is it all relied, the provisions all relied on Joe Biden to enforce them in the first place. The same guy that dismantled the policies and the secure border to begin with. This is how nonsensical this stuff is. This is how deceptive this stuff is. So there you go. I'll post this in my podcast description. It's a long article. It's a long letter, and it pretty much goes into where all the money's going. I don't have time to read it now. It would take way too long. Nobody wants to hear me read for 50 minutes. But it's very detailed. It goes into exactly why the bipartisan border bill would not have secured the border and would have made things worse, and it was not bipartisan. I mean, I don't know how many times we got to go over this. The people that read this bill, the people that actually looked into this bill and took the time to read things and read into the provisions, they know this is a bad bill. But the people that listen to Joe and Mika, the people that listen to MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, the people that listen to the lamestream media, the only thing they know is that Republicans stopped it. And so therefore, that's why the border's bad. Because that's the exact narrative Democrats were trying to create from the very beginning. Because they knew come election time that this border was going to be insane, immigration was going to be nuts because what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did. And so they were trying to figure out a way that they can blame Republicans. And this is how they do it. They're not dumb, folks. Like the Democrats, they may be evil and cynical, but they are not dumb. They're very smart. The leaders, the politicians, and the bureaucrats are. The people that just listen to Joe and Mika and Rachel Madcow and CNN, like honestly, it sometimes infuriates me when they make comments that are just so intellectually lazy. Okay, it is so, like, they're like robots, man. They're like drones. They're like the Borg from freaking Star Trek. This is the Republicans' fault because they stopped a border bill. It's like, did you actually read the bill? I got comments all over my social media from videos that I posted on how what this administration did to this border and to our immigration process is criminal. These people should be indicted. They should be charged. They lost 320,000 immigrant children to sex rings and forced labor camps. They don't even know where they're at. What they did is criminal. And I got comments from people saying, oh, well, this is the Republicans' fault because they didn't pass the bipartisan border bill. More notably, it's Trump's fault, of course, right? Everything's Trump's fault. And they say these things without even reading the bill. They don't even do research. They're literally just repeating what they heard from their CNN, from their media outlets, from their echo chamber. The moment you get into these people, the moment you start asking them, where did you get your information? Where did you do research? Have you read the bill? They don't respond. They don't know because they know they're just repeating talking points because they're too lazy to do the research. Either they're too lazy or they're too emotionally dedicated to their talking point and they refuse to want to change it. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with very, very emotionally invested people that have been emotionally invested into hating Trump for the last decade. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing that's going to change their mind. Those people have TDS. They have mental problems. There's no doubt about it. Those are the same people that were part of that survey from the Rasmussen poll that say this country would be better off if Donald Trump was assassinated. 28% of Democrats. That's a freaking huge number. So over a quarter of Democrats wish Donald Trump was assassinated and think the country would be better off. For all those people out there that are accusing Donald Trump of creating all this chaos, I have to remind you that in 2016, Donald Trump won the election. It was Democrats creating the chaos. All they had to do was just let Donald Trump serve out his term, let democracy take its course, but they couldn't do that. They're the ones that created the chaos. They are the merchants of chaos, not Donald Trump. The guy didn't do anything. All he did was run for election and the American people voted him in. It was the Russia collusion hoax, then the impeachment, then the second impeachment. That's creating chaos. It's the Democrat Party that are the merchants of chaos. They are the destroyers of democracy. They are the biggest threats to this republic. And they're so emotionally invested into hating one man because they were told by literal propaganda outlets that they can't even see it. So these shows, these videos typically aren't for those people, but I don't know what else to do. I can't do anything else for these people that say that the reason why the immigration crisis is a crisis is because of Donald Trump. I read pieces of the bill. I read all the provisions. I don't know what else is going to convince them that the bill was rejected by us. I remember personally calling in to my representative saying, vote against this bill. We all did. Millions did. You guys remember that's why there was almost that fist fight in Congress? Is because the American people were calling in by the millions saying, do not pass this bill because it was codifying illegal immigration. It was going to streamline the process. Granted, it would have made the southern border look better, but the interior of the country, all these states, it would have been a flipping disaster. Because just like what's going on in Ohio, where they just dumped 20,000 Haitian immigrants into a town of 50,000, 60,000, that would have been 4 times worse all over the country. And at the very beginning of this administration, where we said every state's going to be a border state, well, it's here. These people have imported the third world. They've imported, 14,900 convicted murderers. They've imported 20,061 illegal immigrants convicted of sexual assault. They've imported 105,000 illegal immigrants convicted of regular assault. They've imported 60,268 illegal immigrants convicted of burglary, larceny, and robbery. They've imported 126,343 illegal immigrants convicted of traffic offenses. Now you want to see why your insurance is going up? Is because there's 126,000 illegal immigrants that have been convicted of traffic offenses on top of the millions of illegal immigrants in this country who have driver's license now, because these states, these sanctuary states, are giving driver's licenses to these illegal immigrants that the Biden-Harris administration are importing. So that's why your car insurance is going up. Weapons offenses. The Biden-Harris administration has imported 16,820 illegal immigrants who have been convicted of weapon offenses. Where's all the outrage? Where's all the anti-gunners? Where's all the Democrats that want to take Americans' guns away? They're not concerned that we have 16,820 illegal immigrants who have been convicted of weapons offenses? Where's the outrage? This is the most concerning one to me. The Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration has imported 3,372 illegal immigrants who've been convicted of kidnapping. And they're roaming free in the United States. And last but not least, the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration has imported 3,971 illegal immigrants who've been convicted of commercialized sexual offenses. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a crisis by design. This is a self-inflicted crisis that was created by Joe Biden and, more notably, Kamala Harris, considering how she was put in charge of the core issues with our immigration process. How did she do? Should she be fired or promoted? I say fired. I'm telling you right now, you vote for this, This country is finished. Being an American citizen won't mean anything. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. Share this episode, smash the like button, share it with your friends and family, especially your friends and family that may be Democrats that continue this talking point that Donald Trump's to blame for the immigration crisis because he rejected a border bill even though he's not in office. Share this episode with them. That's all we can do. The main purpose on this show was to inform my fellow Americans, was to inform you, my audience. Because informed people make good decisions and uninformed people make bad decisions. And what we're experiencing right now is 4 years of people making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. 4 years of an administration that was a bad decision. There's no doubt about it. For those of you people that voted for Joe Biden, you have buyer's remorse. I don't blame you. It was a trick. They duped you. They didn't dupe me, but they duped a lot of people. Talking about how Joe Biden was going to be a moderate. If Joe Biden came out on that stage, that debate stage, when he was giving his interview to the American people, and he told the American people, I'm going to go to war with the fossil fuel industry that's going to increase the prices of your gas. You think he would have got elected? If Joe Biden would have came out on that stage and said, I'm going to appease Iran and relieve sanctions on their oil revenue, do you think the American people would have voted for him? No. If Joe Biden would have came out on that stage and said, I'm going to dismantle every single one of Donald Trump's border policies that gave us the most secure border in U.S. history, do you think people would have voted for him? No. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden promised to be a moderate and ended up being one of the most radical, destructive presidents of all time. And his partner in crime, Kamala Harris, is trying to do it again. I urge my audience, I urge anybody that's watching this, don't fall for it. It's not going to get better. It's not going to stay the same. It's going to get worse. Way worse. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you stay tuned for the next episode. I'm going to be doing another segment here soon. We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to get into. So once again, thank you for tuning in. God bless you. God bless America. And long live the Republic. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.